Chapter 991, A Ritual Without a Reply. After ending the private communication, Klein made the World German Sparrow look at Catalea.
Please inform Queen Mystic that I wish to meet her to talk about something. The exact time and location is up to her.
Queen Mystic. So Ma'am Hermit represents the royals above the 5 seas.
Leonard was first taken aback before he came to a realization.
What's the matter?
Catalea frowned slightly in a wary manner.
I will forward her your intentions, but I cannot provide any guarantees over her agreement.
Okay.
The World German Sparrow nodded simply, indicating that it was fine. At this moment, Derek finally had an opportunity as he asked.
Everyone.
He glanced at Mr. Hanged Man and Mr. World before continuing.
The ritual needed for me to advance to Priest of Light requires pure darkness. I need to bury my entire body in ice that usually doesn't melt. In the City of Silver, such ice isn't difficult to find. However, how do we create pure but safe darkness?
So that's the Priest of Light's advancement ritual. Little Sun sure is honest and simple.
Due to her lack of experience and knowledge, Audrey was unable to provide any substantial suggestions. All she could do was cast her eyes at the person she believed was capable of resolving the problem, the World Mr. German Sparrow. And at this moment the World raised his hands to pinch his temples. As for the fool Klein, he was rapidly trying to think of a solution.
Sigh, if this were the outside world, pure darkness is extremely easy to obtain. Ice that normally doesn't melt would be the most troublesome thing to obtain, but the City of Silver is the complete opposite. There, darkness is too dangerous. Just being within it will result in one's disappearance, or suffering the attacks of strange monsters. I can get Leonard to provide charms from the Evernight domain, and then I can stir some of the powers of the mysterious space above the gray fog. Using Little Sun's prayers, I can provide an area of artificial darkness. But the problem lies in me being unable to determine if this would bring the normal danger that the City of Silver encounters. This is not something that can be answered with divination. When matters do not involve myself, I can only determine if a matter is dangerous or not, or when matters should be done. And under such situations, there are too many elements involved, and the sources of danger are diverse. Yes, I'll summon Arrodes later and ask it.
Klein had previously been considering the problem over Little Sun's advancement, but he had never been able to find an answer. Seeing the world silent, Leonard, who had originally wanted to say that creating pure darkness is extremely easy, slowly shut his mouth. He began pondering over the sun's words and caught notice of a word that he had ignored. Safe!
In the forsaken land of the gods, in the City of Silver, darkness is equivalent to danger.
Leonard roughly grasped the key idea, but due to his lack of understanding, he was unable to provide any suggestions. Finally, it was Alger who spoke. He glanced at Derek and said,
I will help you gather information and seek out solutions, but in the process, you might need to provide some help to confirm that it can be done.
No problem.
Derek answered without any hesitation. Right on the heels of that, he added,
There's no need to rush it. I still have about 1 month before I can finish digesting my notary potion.
Alger nodded gently, indicating that this wasn't something that needed any reminders. At this moment, Catalea deliberated for a moment and said to Derek,
Perhaps we can consider this problem from another angle. Your advancement ritual wouldn't last too long. We can simply increase the time you can survive in pure darkness to resolve this matter. I remember that you've mentioned that after being left in darkness with 0 light, there are 2 dangers. The first would be the attacks from strange monsters that come from unknown origins, and the second would be a baffling instance of disappearance that is akin to evaporating. The former situation is easy to resolve. You can make a request to your chief for certain sealed artifacts, or you can get him to stand guard by your side. As for the second case, I don't know enough. You can attempt to ask your chief.
Derek thought about it carefully and suddenly felt that this was a viable train of thought, with a rather significant chance of success. He immediately replied in pleasant surprise,
Thank you, Ma'am Hermit.
The exchange and learning session continued until the gathering slowly came to an end. Seeing that it was almost done, the fool Klein rapped gently on the table's corner.
Let's end it here for today.
Your wish is our will.
Audrey and company stood up and bowed reverently. After they vanished from above the gray fog, Klein left the area and returned to the real world. He first took out his wallet and got the paper crane which was folded by Will Ossepton. Spreading it across the table, he picked up a pencil and simply wrote,
There's something.
After folding the paper crane and stuffing it under his pillow, Klein got into bed and genuinely took an afternoon nap. In his hazy dream, he once again saw the pitch-black plains and the towering steeple. Passing through the plains and through the wooden doors, Klein arrived at the familiar corner. A black pram came out of the thick shadows as Will Ossepton, wrapped in silver silk, sucked at his right thumb and derided angrily.
You are getting more and more impolite.
Klein laughed dryly and said,
With our relationship, there's no need for such pleasantries, right?
Will Ossepton harumphed and said,
Speak, what's the matter?
This is the thing. I recently encountered Eamon's avatar.
Klein said directly. The baby's mouth widened a little as though he was about to cry. It took him great effort to control himself as he said,
I haven't been born for more than 1 month.
There's nothing I need from you. I only wish to ask you a question.
Klein quickly added. Will Ossepton raised his fleshy arm and waved it.
What is it?
Klein immediately said with a smile,
Eamon's avatar can steal the destiny of others and appear while replacing their identities. I wish to know how I can see through such a terrifying matter.
Will Ossepton chuckled as he pointed up at the sky with his index finger.
Pray for help.
From the looks of it, using the powers of the gray fog can be used to discover the grafting of destiny.
Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he felt even more certain. When he thought of the word using, he was referring to using his marionette to pray to the fool while he entered above the gray fog. Through the point of light representing his believer, he could survey the surrounding area to seek out any abnormalities. In a sense, this was equivalent to the fool's observation, and equivalent to an augmented true vision.
But the problem is that I can't stay above the gray fog to observe for grafting all the time. It might be the case that, in between 2 of the observation periods, Eamon could have entered Bokeland Street and have done something.
Klein thought before asking with some deliberation,
Anything you would like to remind me of?
Will Ossepton turned his head away without looking at him as he mumbled,
You have to visit me and my parents once this week. During high tea.
No problem.
Klein agreed without any hesitation. Only then did the baby turn his head back and giggle.
Next week, around Wednesday or Thursday, there might be some changes in your destiny.
Is that so?
Klein nodded in thought as he watched the black pram slowly retreat into the shadows. After waking up from his dream, he packed up his items and began setting up an altar without any rest. This time, the target of his prayer was the Evernight goddess herself, and not artificial death. This was to prevent Eamon from prying upon the source of the stirring via the changes in destiny, and, thus, noticing something wrong.
How could the Evernights blessed be praying to artificial death?
After setting up the ritual, Klein wiped his face and turned into the cold-looking Gehrman sparrow, causing his height to drop a little lower. After igniting the first 2 candles in front, Klein made the ordinary candle representing himself burn with a yellow flame. There were 2 candles in front. One was a candle made of night vanilla and slumber flower to represent Evernight, and the other was a candle made up of white chestnut flowers and wild rose to represent concealment. Following that, he created a wall of spirituality, dripped full moon essential oil, and burned some herbal powder that pleased the goddess. Bit by bit, he completed the ritual. Towards the end, Klein took 2 steps back, activated his spirit vision, and chanted softly,
I pray for the power of the dark night. I pray for the power of the mystery. I pray for the goddess's loving grace. I encountered blasphemer Eamon's avatar in Backland. He was gathering the characteristics of a marauder pathway demigod. I seek for the blessings of concealment so as to complete the mission of eradicating the blasphemers' avatars. Night vanilla, a herb that belongs to the red moon, please pass my supplication to the goddess. Moonflower, a herb that belongs to the red moon, please pass my supplication to the goddess.
After he was done chanting, Klein patiently waited for a while, but nothing happened. There wasn't any reply.
The goddess is in a critical period of gaining control over the death pathway's uniqueness and is unable to respond beyond anything normal. Should I try to pray to artificial death? After all, if there are the blessings of concealment, Aemon wouldn't be able to see it. If it doesn't, then the source of stirring destiny wouldn't point to me.
Klein frowned little by little as he ended the ritual and cleared the altar. He felt that he needed to find other solutions. Inisawak! After he finished clearing the desk and turned around, prepared to head for the reclining chair, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The figure wore a simple linen robe with signs of patching. By the figure's waist was a belt made of tree bark. Raven black hair cascaded down freely as the figure's feet didn't wear any socks or shoes, making them covered in dust and wounds. It was a lady. She had extremely normal facial features. Her ghostly black eyes were no different from the common person, but just looking at her left Klein feeling a sense of extreme peace and serenity. Even though feelings of alarm rose up within him, they were unable to overpower the peacefulness. Chapter 992, Arrodes, congratulations, Klein asked in a rather complicated state of calmness.
You are...
The lady in a simple robe nodded and said,
Ariana, servant of concealment.
Servant of concealment, Ariana. Klein's eyes constricted as he knew who the lady was. As a former Nighthawk, how could he not be aware of the name Ariana? She was the Evernight Cloister's matron, head of the 13 archbishops, a likely candidate for the future pope. Regardless of which identity she had, she was part of the general knowledge that couldn't be avoided in religious studies and mysticism. As for the name, Servant of Concealment, Klein had read about it in Emperor Rosel's diary. Considering the similar name of Attendant of Mysteries, he suspected that this pointed to an angel. Meanwhile, based on the law of Beyonder Characteristics conservation, with a sequence 0 in existence, it meant that Attendant of Mysteries couldn't be a sequence 1 angel. Therefore, Klein believed that the Servant of Concealment was likely sequence 2 of the Evernight pathway.
It isn't that the goddess didn't reply, but that she used a very special way to respond. She directly sent her servant over.
Klein felt mixed emotions that could hardly be described. He fell silent for a few seconds before giving a solemn bow.
Good afternoon, Your Eminence.
In the various churches, if a demigod at the angel level walked the land, there was a need to address them as Your Eminence as a show of respect. Likewise, towards the pontiff, pope, and chief shepherd representatives of the deities, one had to use Your Holiness. In addition, a church's head was synonymous with the Holy See or Apostolic See. Of course, many a time, the Holy See could also represent the church's headquarters itself. Ariana tapped her chest 4 times in a clockwise fashion and replied in a pious manner.
May the goddess bless you.
She then said,
I'm an ascetic. You can just call me ma'am.
Yes, Ma'am Ariana.
Klein didn't insist. Ariana looked at him calmly for 2 seconds and directly asked,
You plan to deal with blasphemer Amon's avatars in Backland?
Yes, I wish to obtain the blessings of concealment.
Klein frankly replied. At this moment he felt a little stumped because this was different from what he expected. He originally expected the goddess to answer by blessing him. Then he and Palazoros could join forces to wipe out all of Amon's avatars in Backland. During this process, it wouldn't expose Leonard or the Marauder Pathway Angel. But now, with the blessings becoming something corporeal that would be involved in the battle, Palazoroast would immediately be discovered once he took action. When that happened, it was hard to predict what would ensue.
Don't tell me I don't need to ally with Palaz Zoroast. I'll only get him to provide intel and then split some of the spoils of war.
Klein's thoughts rapidly ran through his mind as Ariana spoke unhurriedly.
I can provide the power of concealment to shield everything that happens from the prying of fate. However, I cannot guarantee that I can eliminate all of Amon's avatars in Backland.
Palez Zoroast said that he has the means of doing so. The person who understands Amon the best is indeed a sequence one of the same pathway.
Klein thought and said,
Ma'am Ariana, I have already come up with a well-thought-out plan. All you need is to provide the power of concealment. You do not need to be involved in the actual battle. Leave the rest to me.
Ariana nodded and raised her right arm as she spread her palm. Points of light lit up, profound and resplendent as they quickly outlined an emblem in her palm. This emblem was completely crystallized, as though it was made of obsidian. It made one realize its existence when looking at it, but it appeared to vanish when not looking at it.
This is my Evernight coat of arms. It doesn't possess any characteristics or power by itself. The only use is that, when triggered, it will establish a connection with me, regardless of where you are in the real world.
Ariana explained simply,
Before you begin your operation, remember to use it. I will provide you with the power of concealment. If you need more direct assistance, use Ancient Hermes to chant Ariana when triggering it.
This is equivalent to an itemized altar and ritual that points to her. Oh, at the level of angel, the range of responding to prayers has extended to the entire world.
Klein instantly grasped the true nature of the Evernight coat of arms. As a bizarro sorcerer, he did not have the means to reply to prayers. This was a trait that could be obtained only at Sequence 3. Of course, as Sea God and the Fool, he was very well versed in such matters. Klein didn't stand on ceremony as he accepted it, and bowed sincerely.
Thank you.
After saying that, he tapped 4 spots in a clockwise manner on his chest, forming the sign of the Crimson Moon.
Praise the lady.
This way, he could still join forces with Palez Zoroast. As long as he triggered the Evernight coat of arms without using Ancient Hermes to chant Ariana's name, everything would be fine.
Praise the lady.
Ariana replied piously. Her figure then vanished as though she had been erased by an eraser.
This is a departure by entering a concealed state.
Klein pursed his lips in thought. Meanwhile, he was filled with suspicion over Ariana's swift arrival. After all, the Evernight pathway wasn't well versed in methods such as teleport. To go from Winter County all the way to Backland required a significant amount of time.
My ritual isn't the kind that prays for a direct descent. Could it be that Ma'am Ariana happened to be in the vicinity in the Backland Diocese? Isn't that too much a coincidence? If it isn't one, it only serves to exacerbate the problem. What is she doing in Backland? The undercurrents are stirring.
Klein retracted his gaze and patiently waited a while before turning back into Dwayne Dantes. He found a pen and some paper once again and drew the symbol that was a mixture of concealment and mystery prying. When the final stroke was written, the full-body mirror in the master bedroom produced a dark but pure light, as though a silent undercurrent was surging out from the bottom of a lake. Right on the heels of that, fireworks appeared, bursting in the sky. Colors of gold, silver, red, and blue exploded as words formed in the mirror.
Welcome back, Great Master. Your humble servant, Arrodes, has witnessed the retrieval of a portion of your authority. I'm thrilled that you are gradually recovering your aura. You will eventually return to your supreme position and make the entire world turn silent under your watch.
This is really passionate. There's always something new.
Klein nodded in silence. Amidst the fireworks, those words dissipated and formed into a new sentence.
Great Master, what instructions do you have for me?
I have a question.
Klein said calmly.
In a place where being in darkness can result in danger, how should one create a safe but pure darkness? There are 2 kinds of dangers involved. 1, it will make a person directly vanish in the darkness, and 2, it will cause strange monsters to appear and attack.
The fireworks in the full-body mirror calmed down as aqueous light rippled. Silver words surfaced one after another.
Great Master, are you referring to the Forsaken Land of the Gods?
This magic mirror actually knows quite a lot. He also gave me a free question in passing.
Klein nodded and said,
That's right.
Without any breaks in between, Arrodes's full-body mirror produced new lines of Loanese text.
The formation of the Forsaken Land of the Gods is related to the second Creator's fall. The danger of night there stems from the transformation of two essential powers. First, it's the remnants of the Evernight Goddess's divine powers. Second, it's the influence left behind by the Creator. He wielded partial authority over shadows, darkness, fallen, corruption, and mutation. The former makes creatures vanish into thin air, while the latter produced monsters in the darkness.
So the two types of dangers stem from different powers. It's no wonder that there's such huge differences. Arrodes called the ancient sun god the second creator. This is very close to my theory. Amon's and Adam's father isn't the reawakening of the original creator, but a transmigrator who inherited a huge inheritance.
Klein asked in thought.
In that case, the Evernight goddess was involved in the fall of the second creator?
This was something Klein had vaguely expected. This was from the trait of humans evaporating in the darkness of the Forsaken Land of the Gods. It was very similar to the strange disappearances if one didn't sleep at night in the ruins of the Battle of the Gods. And based on Little Son's description, king of demonic wolves, Phlegrea, who wielded control over the Evernight and concealment authorities, had long perished in the Second Epoch. It was impossible that he had done it. Therefore, unless there was another deity of the Evernight pathway born in the middle, it was difficult for the two abnormalities to not have the Evernight goddess involved. On the surface of the mirror, the silver light rapidly converged, forming a short sentence.
That's right.
That's right. Klein was just about to press on when he immediately shut up.
He had just recalled one of his identities, Blessed of the Evernight. Therefore, even without anyone watching him, he had to show respect to the deity and not seek out relevant secrets. Of course, time in the mysterious space above the gray fog was excluded.
He was just about to focus on the main question from before, to urge Arrodes to list out solutions when he saw the silver words in the full-body mirror change.
Great Master, your loyal servant, Arrodes, wishes a small favor from you. Can we not discuss matters regarding the Evernight goddess?
At the end of the question, a simple stick figure was drawn.
Just as I wished.
Klein deliberately pondered for 2 seconds and said,
Okay.
The silver swirls on the surface of the mirror immediately turned brisk as words began taking form.
As for the question you asked, there are two solutions. One is to accept the corruption and let oneself transform into monsters of the darkness. The reason why these creatures do not vanish into thin air during the night is because they have received the protection of the fallen authority. This way, all the darkness is equivalent to safety. The second is to create a darkness that comes with the dream world. This will allow the spirit body to receive the protection of the dream, thus slowing down the encroachment of danger at night.
Chapter 993, Another Possibility. Allowing the spirit body to receive protection of a dream to slow down the encroachment of danger at night. This is similar to the necessity to sleep when night fell in the ruins of the battlefield of the gods. Also, the powers in the Forsaken Land of the Gods likely isn't under the goddess's control. Once one vanishes in the darkness over there, they definitely won't enter the foggy town. Where will it point towards? Or would they stay in the same spot, unable to interact with companions in the real world until they die of starvation or old age? After reading Arrodes's reply, Klein was somewhat enlightened as he roughly grasped the crux of the issue. However, he felt that this wasn't necessarily useful, because the sun only required pure darkness so that he could be buried in ice that normally wouldn't melt to consume the Priest of Light potion. Once he entered a dream, there was no way for him to control his own body to complete that critical step. That way, even if he could remain in the darkness for prolonged periods of time, it would be meaningless.
Yes, I'll wait until Little Sun asks the chief of the City of Silver before coming up with an actual plan based on his answer. Of course, before that, I can try to get a corresponding solution from Leonard to figure out how to create darkness with a temporary dream world.
Klein nodded slightly, acknowledging the answer provided by the magic mirror. As for the first option of accepting corruption and turning into a monster in the darkness, it wasn't even considered. In the extraordinary world, this was equivalent to committing suicide, which almost couldn't be reversed. Upon considering how he still had one question left to ask, Klein deliberated and asked,
Where can I obtain the potion formula of the Seer Pathways Sequence 3, Scholar of Yore?
The full-body mirror's surface had aqueous light ripple once again as it reflected a dark cathedral without any natural light. Klein found this scene very familiar as he immediately recalled what it represented. This was where Zaratul, who had turned into a monster, hid. However, this time, deep inside the cathedral, the cluster of blurry and huge maggots were no longer present. Just as Klein's pupils dilated, the silver words appeared beneath the scene depiction.
Great Master, Zaratul has vanished. I can't find him.
Vanished. Klein momentarily forgot to breathe. Although he had long known of Zaratul's return, since he was the one who began the chain reaction by opening the door to the foggy town, he never expected this big shot to secretly leave the cathedral, his whereabouts becoming unknown.
Even Arrodes is unable to locate him. What is he plotting?
The more Klein thought, the more a chill ran down his back. Having become a Sequence 4 demigod, he could confirm one thing. His control over the mysterious world above the gray fog was still insufficient. He could temporarily only converge the leaking specialness that it had augmented him with in the real world, making it difficult for beyonders of corresponding pathways to see it. But it was unable to repress the law of beyonder characteristic convergence. As for the gray fog, it had proven time and time again that he had an invisible form of attraction towards beyonders of the seer, apprentice, and marauder pathway. Amongst them, the effects on the seer pathway was most evident.
Besides, I myself am quite an attractive Sequence 4 Bizarro sorcerer. It's not impossible for Zaratul to suddenly come to Backland one day.
Klein maintained a deadpan expression and said to the full-body mirror that was switching scenes,
Got it.
Arrodes presented another scene which Klein was equally familiar with. It was the Antigonus family's treasure trove at the peak of the Hornassus mountain range. Below the scene, silver words quickly surfaced once again.
Great Master, there's another possibility, but I can't tell. I just know that it's easier than the first two.
The Antigonus family's notebook isn't there this time. That's right. It will lead the wielder to the main peak of the Hornassus mountain range to seek out the Antigonus family's treasure trove. It's basically the same as the previous option. What's the possibility that even Arrodes can't tell? Based on what I know about the factions in control of the seer pathway, it's implying that I should pray to the goddess for it. The goddess is the mother of concealment, so she can choose whether Arrodes can see it or not.
Klein's thoughts scattered and quickly made a connection. Of course, he didn't believe that directly praying for the Scholar of Yore potion formula would allow him to get it. It was too ridiculous, as though it was child's play. From his experience as a Nighthawk, he suspected that he might need to make enough contributions before he could obtain the Scholar of Yore potion formula from the Evernight goddess via a ritual.
Making enough contributions. This sure is a familiar phrase.
Klein sighed as he began having some ideas. Clearly, he had hints on how to do so, handle the artificial death faction of the numinous episcopate. However, Klein suspected that the goddess only had up to the Scholar of Yore sequence for the seer pathway potion formulas, and not the subsequent ones at the angel level. This was because the Antigonus family's angel didn't perish immediately back then, but had hidden in a secret palace, losing control to become a monster, and was in a half-sealed state. In addition, the Fool card was also there and hadn't been retrieved yet. At this moment, Klein had the intention of asking about Amon's avatars, but he suddenly recalled that within the memories of the rat demigod, the warning about the marauder pathway, Angel, and Amon had been given by this very mirror. As his thoughts flashed through his mind, Klein narrowed his eyes, looked at the full-body mirror, and nodded.
All right, that's it for today. Head back. If there's anything in the future, I'll summon you again.
Yes, Master. Goodbye, Master Tilda. Your loyal and humble servant, Arrodes, is constantly waiting to return to your side.
Light gathered on the mirror's surface, depicting a stick figure waving its hand. After everything returned to normal, Klein turned around and picked up the paper with the previously drawn symbol. With a snap of his fingers, he made it burst into scarlet flames. The ash floated down as he spread open his left hand. In it were 2 maggots shimmering with solid, mysterious symbols. The 2 maggots squirmed gently, using their life force to fill the entire bedroom with madness and bizarreness. The surrounding lights then dimmed and brightened from time to time in a non-uniform fashion. They were none other than the worms of spirit which Klein had separated from himself. Suddenly, Klein reached out his right palm, suddenly pressing them towards the 2 transparent maggots. Instantly, his palm paused, just short of touching the worms of spirit. He raised his palm again, lowering it only to pause. He repeated this several times until he finally exerted his strength with a deadpan expression. Amidst an invisible and illusory cracking sound, his head suddenly felt a stabbing pain. This made his soul feel like it was being ripped apart. It was even more painful than encountering a gunshot or a slash wound. Klein used his clown powers to control the twitching of his facial muscles. After a few seconds, he raised his right hand to rub his temples, inwardly mumbling,
Indeed, the death of every worm of spirit deals damage to the spirit body. My current limit is 6. I'll temporarily stop trying. Let's see how long it takes to recover. Thankfully, this is a tolerable matter. Otherwise, it would be dangerous if a marionette is destroyed, while the worm of spirit isn't able to be collected in time due to an intense battle. Yes, it's different from Amon's Worms of Time avatars. A Bizarro sorcerer's Worms of Spirit will not necessarily die when a marionette is destroyed. Most of the time, a Bizarro sorcerer is able to retrieve them in time. It's because the distance between the body and the marionette isn't that exaggerated.
After confirming the situation and waiting for the Beyonder characteristics contained within the Worms of Spirit to return to himself, Klein rummaged for some materials and set up a ritual to pray to the Fool. After a series of tasks, Klein used the carcasses of 2 Worms of Spirit, 2 silver plates, and the complicated symbol which he had previously recorded down to make 2 silver-black bullets, of which the latter came from Snake of Mercury Will Auseptin. The 2 bullets were carved with strange, indescribable patterns. They kept extending inwards as though they were coming together in the middle at one point. Their entire bodies were gloomy, but not dark. Just one look at it made one's thoughts sluggish. Klein flicked a gold coin and used divination, together with his spiritual intuition, to swiftly determine the abilities of the 2 bullets. The target would immediately enter a state of paralysis upon being hit. The length of time that one was left in this state depended on the potency of one's spirit body. Even Sequence 3 saints would be in a state of stiffness for a second or 2.
This already exceeds my powers. Of course, the premise is that contact can be made. Oh, this is a result of the Gray Fog's augmentation. These 2 bullets should be at the same level as the Fate Siphon charms. Although my Worms of Spirit can't be compared to Amon's and Pallas's Worms of Time, the amount of power I can now draw from the mysterious space above the Gray Fog is clearly superior to what I could do in the past. I shall call them Control Spirit Bullets.
Klein drew Death Knell from his underarm holster, snapped open the cylinder wheel, and stuffed the 2 silver-black Control Spirit bullets inside. Following that, he spread open a piece of paper beside the altar and wrote,
Next, your mission is to seek out relatively high-level charms and Beyonder bullets. May God be with you. XXX, who raised 3 requests from you.
This letter was written to Patrick Bryan of the Numinous Episcopate's Artificial Death faction.
With a subordinate at my disposal, why let him go to waste?
As Klein mumbled, he folded his letter. At the altar from before, he summoned Patrick Bryan's messenger. The surface of the desk burst into pitch-black flames and quickly gathered together, forming a translucent bird with dark feathers. The spirit world creature glanced at Klein before slowly lowering its head to bite at the envelope. Watching it disappear, Klein nodded slightly and inwardly muttered,
Patrick's contract companion isn't of a low level either.
He quickly reined in his thoughts, took out another letter, and fluidly wrote,
I have already obtained the blessing of concealment. You can attempt to gather items at the Marauder Pathway demigod level. In addition, I found a way to crack the theft and replacement of destiny. You don't have to be too anxious. Do you know how to create a darkness that includes a temporary dream world? If you have the time, can you head to Tenjin and help me use 3-0782 to create flaring sun bullets? The mutated sun sacred emblem has the divine blood of the eternal blazing sun hidden in it. Only by sufficiently raising your strength can we be more confident at dealing with Amon's avatars.
Chapter 994, Prelude. At 7 Pinster Street, Leonard, who had specially returned home to participate in the tarot gathering, was just about to head to St. Samuel Cathedral's basement to read the dossiers so as to make preparations for his placating of souls at night when his vision suddenly went into a blur. He saw the messenger in a dark, full dress holding 4 blonde, red-eyed heads. As a soul assurer, he could already see such creatures with spirit bodies. After taking Klein's letter, Leonard didn't even have the chance to say thank you when Renette Tinnecker turned around and walked into the void. She didn't even stay for long. Leonard couldn't help but ask Pelez Zoroast with a suppressed voice.
Old man, why does Klein have a messenger of this level? Is this a perk of being a blessed?
He originally fantasized that it was standard for every Tarot Club member, but he later realized that he had been imagining things. Accost. Pelez Zoroast's slightly aged voice chuckled immediately.
It is likely to solely belong to Klein Moretti. Everyone receives some special fortuitous encounter, isn't that the case? Isn't it the same even for a fellow like you? Heh. I thought you would use incomplete angel to describe her, but you ended up using messenger of this level. Not bad, you still remember my warning?
Leonard curled the corners of his lips, spread open the piece of paper, and read the content on it. Pelez Zoroast quickly scanned the heading through Leonard's eyes.
He's indeed the blessed of concealment and fate.
Leonard didn't look at the ground. Instead, he took a few steps back and threw himself into the embrace of the sofa before saying,
Klein can see through the theft and replacement of destiny. Then, we don't need to rush to seek out items at the Marauder's Pathway demigod level.
Pelez scoffed.
Even if you were in a hurry, you have no idea where to seek them out.
Even for the gathering of the Hermits of Fate, similar items needed years to appear even once. And the next gathering was to happen at the end of the year. Leonard was momentarily at a loss for words and could only cast his gaze at the last 2 paragraphs. After a brief silence, he chuckled.
I've always been curious as to where Klein received the high-level charm of the Sun Domain when facing Mago Ghosts. I thought it was provided to him by that Death Console, but I couldn't understand why a Death Domain angel would be gathering high-level charms of the Sun Domain. Wouldn't that be suicide? Now, I finally understand. Old man, I wielded 30782 before as well. Why didn't you notice that there was a drop of the eternal blazing sun's divine blood hidden in that? If you could have stolen some of its power back then, things wouldn't have.
Leonard originally wanted to mock Old Man, but as he went on, he fell silent. Pelez Zoroast sighed in his mind.
If that drop of divine blood could be so easily discovered, that mutated sun sacred emblem wouldn't have been in Tenjin.
Leonard fell silent for a few seconds before asking,
Then how am I to create an opportunity to get that sacred emblem to create the flaring sun charm?
Although Klein made it sound simple in his letter, Leonard knew that it wasn't an easy task. This was because he wasn't a Nighthawk of Tenjin City. Even if he returned to visit his former colleagues and teammates, he had no authority to enter Chanis Gate. Upon hearing his question, Pelez Zoroast replied in a peeved manner.
Why are you asking me something as trivial as this? Can't you think for yourself?
Leonard coughed uncomfortably as he began thinking seriously to seek out a solution.
I'm currently working alone, but the Archbishop has given me the authority to get the help of the local Nighthawks in the region of question. If all the souls in Backlund have been placated, and if I haven't finished digesting my potion, wouldn't I have to do it at other dioceses? When that happens, if Tingen happens to have a paranormal accident, it will be very reasonable for me to return and get 2 Nighthawks and use 30782.
After Leonard finished muttering to himself, Pelez Zoroast chuckled.
Not bad. You came up with an idea so quickly. But have you thought about it? You are placating them, not purifying them. This is contradictory with obtaining 30782. It will easily incur suspicion.
Leonard, who had been praised, immediately laughed.
Old man, that's because you aren't aware. Back when I joined the Nighthawks team, there was one line in the education I received. Only under the premise of having the ability to purify can placating achieve the best results. Emperor Roselle had also once said that to solve problems, you need a stick in one hand and a carrot in the other.
Pelez Zoroast immediately TSKED.
Then follow your plan. Of course, that's assuming that you can finish Anthony Stevenson's missions in a week or 2. If you haven't obtained the Sunflare bullets before the actual operation of eliminating Amon begins, then it would no longer be necessary.
Leonard recalled the list of missions written on the pieces of paper as his forehead twitched. He then forced himself to forget about his worries and mumbled,
I wonder when the mission to punish the Sanguine will begin. I wonder if the Sanguine has a sealed artifact at the Marauder Pathways demigod level. Temporary dream world. I can create it myself. I'll find a chance to make some charms. But can power at this level be able to resist the corrosion of the darkness in the forsaken land of the gods?
In an apartment in Sherwood Borough, Forrest took out a novel, sat on the sofa, and watched Shio walk towards the lobby as she wore her boots to head out. Finally, Forrest couldn't hold back her puzzlement as she said,
There's no rush. That gentleman said that he wouldn't assign the mission that quickly.
Shio shot her a glance and said,
I'm a bounty hunter. I have other missions.
Upon saying that, she paused and said after some deliberation,
Fours, do you think that Miss Justice resembles Miss Audrey?
Forrest was taken aback for a few seconds before she snapped back to senses. She subconsciously waved her hand and chuckled.
How is that possible?
Just as she said that, the similarities began flashing through her mind, her eyes widening in response. After a while, she whispered,
It's not impossible. Spectator pathway, psychology alchemists, noble lady, blonde hair, and green eyes. She's the only noble I know that meets those criteria. Of course, I don't know that many nobles. Furthermore, I have no idea if the ones I'm familiar with have anything to do with the psychology alchemists.
Co silently listened to her friend and said, after some thought,
Fours, do you still remember the missions assigned to us by Miss Audrey? I originally thought that it was issued by Earl Hall, but on second thought, perhaps it came from the tarot gathering. Also, how did we know of Mr. Fool's honorific name? Do you remember? It was from books we borrowed from Viscount Glaint. In the book cover was a strange, ancient slip.
Fours nodded in enlightenment.
If we could discover it, as a good friend of Viscount Glaint, Miss Audrey has a chance of discovering it as well. This can explain why she joined the gathering.
Yeah.
Shio agreed with Force's guess. Force opened her mouth and was just about to say something when she recalled that the matter with the Sanguine wasn't completely over. She immediately looked around warily and said,
Co, we should lessen our discussions of gatherings in the future. As for Miss Audrey, we can visit her once every week or 2. We can continue observing when the time comes.
Co snapped to her senses and nodded heavily.
All right.
She then opened her door and went to a particular bar in Eastborough and sat by the bar counter. Rapping on the table, she said to the bartender, who looked up,
Any new missions today?
The bartender gave a rough list without mentioning any investigations of a particular Mr. Ernest Boyar.
Indeed, I'll have to wait till tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow.
Co looked around, retracted her gaze, and asked in puzzlement and concern,
I haven't seen Sherman in a while. Do you know where he's been?
Sherman was a young man who thought himself as a woman, one of Zio's informants. The bartender chuckled.
Perhaps he ran off with some man. You do know that he's happy to do so if a man fancies him.
Zio rebutted seriously, feeling a baffling sense of concern.
This isn't something worth ostracizing him about.
She then exerted strength in her palm and jumped off the high stool, prepared to seek out Sherman in the places he was usually seen: Backland Bridge area, Iron Gate Street, Braveheart's Bar. Holding down his hat, Emlyn pinched his nose as he passed through the crowd that exuded all kinds of smells before finding the red-eyed Ian in the card room. Ian smiled as he led Emlyn into an empty billiard room.
Mr. White, what is it this time?
Emlyn took off his hat and quipped.
Something trivial. Help me put up a mission to the bounty hunters. The details of the mission is to track a man named Ernest Boyar, figure out his daily activities. The bounty reward will be 100 pounds.
100 pounds?
Ian subconsciously asked. For investigations like tracking, 100 pounds was quite a ridiculous reward. One had to know that if a bounty hunter was able to complete this mission on their own, they could rest for an entire year, even if they were supporting a family.
The target is rather dangerous.
After the discussion back with the Tarot Club, he had already thought it through. He believed that tracking Ernest Boyar was an easy mission. The sanguine Viscount would definitely pretend as though he didn't notice anything and deliberately follow a fixed trajectory. Therefore, this 100 pounds was in fact payment for misjudgment to take the risk of participating in this operation. Of course, to aid in the misdirection and concealment, it was almost certain that more than one bounty hunter would complete this mission, allowing them to earn different portions of the reward. All Emlyn could guarantee was that misjudgment would earn the most. Coming to an understanding, Ian extended his hand.
I see. Down payment, exact address, level of danger, looks and characteristics. It's best if you have a portrait.
Ernest Boyar then gave 30 pounds in cash and Ernest Boyar's portrait.
Red eyes?
Ian flipped through the pieces of paper in his hand and couldn't help but blurt out.
Yes.
Emlyn nodded gently and looked around him. He suppressed his voice and said,
There's also something else. Help me seek out clues regarding the Rose School of Thought members in Backland.
Ian was taken aback as he asked in puzzlement, as though he had never heard of the name.
Rose School of Thought?
Chapter 995, Conjoined Person. Emlyn glanced at Ian, raised his hand to pinch his nose, and chuckled.
It appears you don't understand me. It's okay. A more simple description is to gather information about foreigners that come from the southern continent, especially from the Star Highlands and the Paz River Valley.
What information do you want exactly? There are plenty of pure-blooded people from the southern continent in Backland. Those that you've mentioned are also common.
Ian calmly asked without flaring up due to the contempt he received. Emlyn laughed.
The ones that are a bit more abnormal, they do things in a fishy manner and seem to all be mysterious. You should understand what I'm getting at.
There are definitely many people you describe. In Backland, they are either servants, workers, or thieves, being part of gangs, as the latter will all meet your criteria of being abnormal, fishy, and mysterious.
Ian sincerely pointed out how unpragmatic Emlyn's request was. Emlyn was already prepared for this. With an unobvious smile, he nodded slightly.
Then, give me all the information that meets those criteria. I'll do the filtering. Oh, I'll pay 50 pounds as down payment for this commission as the standard fees for the early stage investigations. The subsequent payment will be counted based on how much information of value is provided. Each one will cost 20 pounds.
Who is the one to determine its worth?
Ian asked after a few seconds of thought. For him, having a 50-pound income for preliminary work like this was enough for him to accept the job. It was more than enough to hire a dozen people or so to investigate the areas from Eastborough to Cherwoodborough for half a month. He didn't mind how much he could earn from the 50 pounds, as there were many people here who relied on him for their survival. He needed to arrange jobs with payment for them to do from time to time, otherwise he would never be able to be kept abreast with the latest developments. Emlyn sized up Ian and scoffed.
Of course it will be me. You should know how trustworthy I am.
Detective Moriarty never told me that.
Ian mumbled and sighed.
All right. Our last cooperation was still pretty good. I choose to trust you.
Emlyn nodded in satisfaction, took out his wallet, and counted another 50 pounds worth of notes. During this process, Emlyn momentarily felt the pinch when he realized he only had 407 pounds in savings.
And now there's only 357 pounds.
He looked away from the notes and handed the cash to Ian. Bayrick, he didn't stay. Putting on his hat, he walked out of the billiard room and left the Bravehearts bar. On the street, Emlyn stopped pinching his nose and looked up at the flame-like clouds. His expression gradually fell heavy as he silently muttered,
That wraith from before isn't around. Where did it go? Humph. Ian acted as though he had never heard of the Rose School of Thought, but his racing heartbeat had betrayed him. Also, he actually didn't ask if Sherlock Moriarty is back in Backland. He didn't even show any concern. Could it be that Sherlock has already returned to Backland and that he has already met him?
Rorstead Archipelago, City of Generosity Biome. In an area near the harbor, Admiral of Stars Catalea had brought along Frank Lee, who had his sleeves rolled up which revealed his brown hair, to an area outside a house with gas wall lamps. They came to an empty corner and watched as a figure appeared out of the shadows. It was bloodless Heath Doyle, who was in charge of monitoring Artisan Sealf. He was thin, and his skin was so pale that it was transparent. He looked so frail that a gust of wind could topple him.
Did anything strange happen recently?
Catalea nudged the gold-rimmed glasses on her nose. Heath Doyle tersely acknowledged,
3 days after you left, a stranger visited Sealf. He stayed for about 15 minutes. I didn't approach for fear of being discovered. Based on your instructions, I sent men to tail the stranger, but they lost his trail.
What did that stranger look like?
Catalea asked with a slight nod. Heath Doyle took out a piece of raw beef from a leather pouch by his waist. The blood on it remained fresh, but it didn't show any signs of contamination. It appeared to be a pure piece of solid meat. Right on the heels of that, this piece of beef melted in Heath Doyle's hand, dripping to the ground like water. They then squirmed like they had life, drawing a portrait.
This is the effect I want.
Frank Lee's eyes shimmered as he watched this scene, expressing his intentions with excitement. Under his gaze, Heath Doyle had the intention to run, but he slightly slanted his body and pointed to the ground.
Roughly like this.
At this moment, a blood portrait had already taken form. It was that of a man with a mustache, with facial features that resembled that of the Paz River Valley. His greatest characteristic was the 3 ear studs on both his ears.
Golden ear studs, thin body, not much fat, very athletic.
Heath Doyle added. Catulia retracted her gaze from the ground and asked.
And then?
Heath Doyle tersely acknowledged.
No one visited Sealf after that, other than his temporary servants and chef he hired. I got men to investigate them. They are clean. Sealf has an evening stroll at a fixed time every day. He will bring a prostitute home, allowing her to leave only at daybreak. I have been constantly tailing him, but I never discovered any contact with odd people.
He has been acting very normally all this time?
Catalea asked with a frown. From her point of view, not having any abnormalities made it most abnormal. After all, this involved Rose School of Thought members that believed in the primordial moon. Heath Doyle nodded in affirmation.
Yes.
Catalea turned her head to look at the building's main door and said after some thought,
I actually planned on using Beyonder powers to infiltrate and bring Sealf under control in the fastest speed possible before taking him away to prevent any accidents. But from the looks of it, the best solution is to knock on the door.
Unknown danger was what terrified people the most. At the thought that he had been busy with his experiments recently and hadn't done his duty as first mate, Frank Lee hurriedly said,
Captain, I'll go with you.
Catalea took off her thick glasses and hung them by her waist of her black warlock robe before nodding.
Okay.
With that said, she left the shadowy corner and walked towards the main door of Sielf's residence. As she approached, she looked up at the crimson moon that could be seen penetrating through the clouds. She curled her fingers and tapped thrice on the door. Before long, footsteps approached and the door creaked open. Sielf didn't show any obvious changes from the previous time. He remained thin and dark. His eyes were somewhat puffy, and his brown eyes were trying hard to force a smile.
Admiral, is there something this time?
He stood by the door, blocking the gas wall lamp's light behind him. It made the area appear dark and gloomy, as though he was sinking into the shadows. Galilea stared at him for a few seconds before saying slowly,
I have a new idea. I plan on making you a part of my crew.
She stood there motionlessly without any intention of stepping inside. Sielf's expression warped as his voice turned somewhat dark.
Why?
Catalea's eyes seemed to freeze as she slowly said,
Because I'm a pirate.
Pirates didn't need reasons. They did whatever they did out of their own desires. B.A. Sielf's facial muscles twitched as a smile suffused his eyes once again.
I can be your sailor, but as an artisan, I'll be of much greater use in a city.
I agree.
Cathalea destroyed his resistance.
But before then, I need you to spend some time on the future to be partners with others.
Sielf's expression gradually turned cold as he replied in an ethereal voice.
I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. I have a strong urge to procreate every day.
Strong urge to procreate?
Frank Lee's eyes lit up as he asked, seemingly in confirmation. Sielf was taken aback as he wasn't sure whether to nod or shake his head. Frank then looked at Cataleya and asked in excitement,
Captain, is he going to be my assistant for my experiments? I love this trait of his.
Cataleya fell silent for a few seconds before nodding heavily.
Yes.
Frank immediately revealed a bright smile and offered his right hand to Artisan Sielf.
Pleasure to meet you. Let me introduce myself, First Mate of the Future, Frank Lee.
Sielf's expression returned to normal as he shook the man's hand with puzzlement. Then, he said,
Am I really going to spend a short period of time on the future?
I guarantee it with my reputation on the line.
Cataleya sincerely replied before inwardly adding,
It wouldn't take long before Her Majesty personally handles you.
All right. It's not like I can beat you.
Sielf shrugged.
Please permit me to pack my personal belongings.
He then took 2 steps back, turned around, and walked to the staircase at the end of the foyer. As he walked, he suddenly paused and said in an ethereal tone to Cataleya and Frank Lee,
Today's moonlight is as beautiful as it always has been, isn't it?
Without receiving a reply, he proceeded forward and vanished from the staircase. At this moment, Cataleya's heavy expression became obvious. After Sielf opened the door, she had already noticed an abnormality with her eyes. In the past, Sielf's spirit body was that of an ordinary human, but now he was a conjoined person. Under the illumination of the moonlight, this conjoined person was being nourished and was rapidly growing stronger.
This isn't a problem I can resolve. I have to write to Her Majesty. Also, I mustn't forget Gehrman Sparrow's request for a meeting.
Cataleya sighed silently as she subconsciously looked up. High in the sky, a crimson moon remained bright and silent amidst the thin clouds. Backland, Hillston Borough, East Balaam Military Veterans Mess, Dwayne Dantes and Mocht got off their separate carriages and entered the lobby together.